Hey everybody, this is Christy Casey Sanders, the VP of Creative and Chief Storyteller for Plan Your Meetings. I am really excited that you can join us today for this social media safari with Barbara Rozgonyi. Barbara and I met about a month and a half ago at the PYM Live Chicago event. And for those of you who were there, you probably remember her as the woman who won the prize for being the most social media active. And so we started talking, and it turns out that she has quite an extensive background in social media, and our Austin Live attendees had been requesting a video series about social media. So this is the first in a series of tips. So Barbara and I spoke, and she had a really great overview for all the different platforms and how they're relevant to event professionals. So that's why we brought her on the program. So welcome, Barbara.
Oh, thank you. It's so great to be here, Christy.
So I'm going to, while you gaze at the lovely Barbara, I'm going to read you a little bit about her.
Okay.
CoryWest Media, which is a strategic marketing consultancy that attracts attention, builds brands, and connects communities around meetings, associations, and events. CoryWest Media services include insightful digital marketing audits, ROI-driven marketing PR plans, customized LinkedIn and social media training programs, and creative social media services delivered before, during, and after events. She's a publisher of WiredPRWorks.com, which is one of Cizian's 2013 top PR blogs. Her work is often a catalyst for creative thinkers and leaders. She's the founder of Social Media Club Chicago. In 2013, Nokia selected her as one of 2 U.S. reporters to cover Social Media Week Berlin. She's been nominated for Meeting Professional International Chicago Area Chapter Tomorrow's Leader Award, and she serves on MPI CAC's Markham Committee and speaks at a lot of MPI events around the world, or at least around America. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to share my screen. And when I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some instructions on how to interact with us during this presentation, because we do want to get your feedback. So here is how you'll be able to connect with us. The first thing you may notice is while you're watching this video, there's a little Q&A in the corner, or if you're watching this from YouTube, there is an overlay that says be part of the conversation. So why don't you practice right now and click one of those 2, whichever one you see. The second part is it pops open a big viewing window. And then on the right-hand side, there's this big column that says, ask a new question. So you can click that box and enter something. So I would love if you have popped that open to go ahead and click on that and just say, hey, this is so-and-so, and I'm excited to see this because blank. And that way we can, you add a new question. The third step you need to take is you submit the question. It's pretty easy peasy. If you have any trouble with the Q&A app, you can also tweet questions to PYM Live, and I'll get that. And just to remind you, I do have that in the corner. And if you're watching this on demand, you can also leave us comments on the YouTube video itself. All right, cool. So I'd love to hear from you and who you are. If you want to go ahead and use that Q&A app as a comment section. From time to time, we are going to take a break in the program, and Barbara is going to be pausing for commentary and questions. So, Barbara Rozgonyi from Wired PR Works, welcome to the Social Media Safari.
Thank you so much, Christy. It's great to be here, and congrats again on a fabulous event in Chicago. I've been up to the top of Willis Tower before, but never have I been to an event like that with I don't know what you called it. Was it like the tree of Bellinis or something? But anyway, the food was amazing. Presentations were amazing. People were great. I love the speed networking. And it was so wonderful to meet you and your team. And thank you for the intro. I just love to share social media knowledge. And the social media safari concept actually was born out of a Zoofari presentation I did for MPI last summer. And people had so much fun with that I just thought, why don't we just take the safari and run with it? So let's get going, and let's go to the next slide. And here's a picture of me on kind of a safari, not in the jungle, but over in Berlin. That's me in front of the Brandenburg Gate. And as Christy said in my intro, I did win a contest. I was one of 2 people chosen from the US to cover Social Media Week Berlin as a reporter. And there's so much to talk about that I won't talk about here, but I guess what I would like to just share with you is the mindset that social media is international. We all have that in the back of our heads that, you know, oh, it's international. I know anybody can see this, but when you're really part of a conversation, a different part of the world, it comes alive for you. And just to be part of the way an event was presented in Berlin to social media people was probably one of the highlights of my career. So let's go to the next slide.
Sure. I just want to let you know that we've got Kelly and Alyssa and Tanessa, who are representing University of Central Florida, and Andrew right now, at least active in our comment section.
Well, welcome. It's great to have you here. So we talk about where to go in social media. This is the conversation prism, and maybe you've seen it before. It's overwhelming, isn't it? I mean, just looking at it, you don't even know where to start. You see you in the middle, and that's about as far as you can get. So today, luckily for us, we'll go to the next slide, and we will see where we're going to go. We've chosen a few stops on our social media safari, and it's kind of like when you go on vacation. You know, you have so much to choose from, and summer is a time when a lot of people travel. You could go international, you could go US, you could go in your state, you could do a staycation, but where do you stop? And what we're going to do is we're going to stop at some of the main sites. Just like if you came to Chicago, you probably would want to see Willis Tower. You know, that's one of the main stops, and these are the places we're going to go. So let's go to the next slide. And how do we frame this all up so that, you know, what's our packing list? How do we make sure that we know where we're going? And with my company, CoryWest Media, we have a system we use for all marketing, not just social media, but especially it works out really well for events. And that's the WIRED system. You can kind of see the acronym running on the left side there. So the first thing we start with, who and where. We already had a couple of people type in where they're from. If you haven't done that yet, we'd love to know who's here and where you're from. So go ahead and take a minute and type that in as I walk you through the rest of the way this framework works. The next part is intentions. And what are the intentions that you have for the event value? The word intention means to stretch and grow. So that could be how your attendees are going to grow, maybe how your organization is going to grow. Then routes are important too, because when you go on a vacation, how are you going to get there? You could drive, you could fly, you could take the train, maybe even take a boat. And what strategies are you going to use? When you're planning an event, is it to attract attention, build brand awareness, get more people? And then what is the experience going to be? Not just for the attendees, or since we have universities, your students, it's for everyone. And how do you touch them with social media? That leads into the ROI, which is the return on investment, but also return on interest. You're putting all this effort in, what kind of interest are you getting back from it? And then the big piece that ties everything together is the design. We like to think of it as being in 3D, which is digital, direct, and dynamic. And then there's a blueprint that goes along with that. So I'd love to take you through all this, and I have to apologize because we don't have time to do it all today, but we are going to keep going, and we're going to go through these social media sites. So let's go to the next slide, please, Christy.
Awesome. And Lauren from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics is looking forward to seeing how to integrate social into conferences and meetings. And awesome. Kelly Tripp is from Hammond, Indiana, right outside of Chicago.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much. Wonderful to have you here. So in social media, this is who's where. We don't have the demographics as far as age and male or female breakdown, but these are some numbers that give you the ideas of the size. And one of the new ones that you may not know that much about is Snapchat. It's called ephemeral social media because it disappears in 10 seconds or less. We'll talk about that as a trend in a slide going on. So next slide, please. So let's take a little bit of a survey. What's your biggest challenge with social media marketing in your event? Is it know-how? Is it your budget? Is it your time? Or your staff? So what keeps you from doing a better job than you are doing now? Is it know-how, budget, time, or staff? So we'll see how those answers come in. And I did ask this survey last week at a conference I was speaking at, and I was surprised that most people said know-how. I thought maybe they would say time or staff. And like I said to them, well, good thing we're here together because I can help you improve your know-how today. So do we have some answers coming in, Christy?
No, we don't. Not yet. I guess everybody is like easy peasy. They're like, oh, social media, whatevs.
Yeah, well, that's fine. But think about that because, you know, if you really want to go forward, you have to figure out how to overcome your biggest challenge. So think about what it would be. And then, you know, what's your most valuable network? At that conference, 75% of the people said Facebook, and pretty much that's the only place they were. And then blogs. And the number one priority for them was extending the experience. So even if you don't want to participate in this survey, that's fine, but just think about how these questions really apply to what it is that you're trying to do. So the next slide we have shows the growth in social media networks. And while people love Facebook, and I understand why, it's actually on the decline, not by much, but it's not rising as fast as Instagram. Instagram is the fastest growing network. It's owned by Facebook. So let's go to the next slide.
Sure, and Kelly Tripp needs more know-how, so perhaps that's why people didn't answer with specific challenges, because...
yeah, exactly, yeah. And you know what, Kelly, just to let you know, you will never know all there is to know about social media. And when people say, oh, you know so much, and I just say, well, you know what, every day is an adventure. And it's what I love about social media is it's like a test center. You can do so much, you can try things and see what people really like. But since it's more than just you or your event, it's also a community, it's platforms, it's technology, so many different things go into it that it's great because you can keep learning and keep really honing your experience so that it's the best it can be for everyone. Having said that...
Oh, she had a follow-up question I wanted to ask you.
Yes.
So the follow-up question was, which social media works best with what type of event? It's kind of
well, you know, that I wish I had an easy answer for that question, but I will just, and I will answer questions throughout. I'll try and make my answers brief just so we can keep going. But for LinkedIn, that's great for B2B. Facebook would be great for consumer kinds of conferences. YouTube is great for everyone. And let's see, we did have some universities. I would say for universities, you know, it depends on who's attending. If you're trying to market your event space for corporate conferences, LinkedIn might be good, but if you're trying to attract or recruit new students with a recruiting event, they're going to be looking at something different. They might love Instagram or Twitter, or maybe even they want to look at Snapchat. So the short answer to that question really is the best social media platform is where your people are. And in our company, we like to do a social media audit, which really uncovers not really where they're hiding. But you know, like if you really were going on a safari, some people go to a place where they can see all the animals all together. They know that's where they are. Other people like to go out and see if they can find them in the jungle. But it takes a lot less time if you know where they are. So really, another way to figure it out is to do a survey, or just see what kind of results you're getting. If you're doing a lot of stuff on Facebook and people aren't replying, but LinkedIn is taking off, that tells you where their natural habitat is. So I hope that's a good enough of a quick kind of answer.
I thought that was a great answer.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, okay.
You want to start your safari with the Blogger Bears?
Yeah, we're going to go to Blogger Bears. So this conference is Blog Her that's going to take place this summer. And the first time I went to Blog Her was in 2007. I applied to be a live blogger, and I was really scared to death, even though I'd been a corporate writer, and you know my writing had been read by as many as 300,000 associates at Sears. I just was like terrified to cover this conference live, but I said I'll do it. So I got to cover 2 sessions, met some really great people, and I really liked the concept. In 2007, it was a completely different conference than it is today, but it's been fun to watch how the community has grown and just really expanded and connected and united over those years. And if you're looking for a good community study, I think Blogger is a great place to look. You can see they've got 2 conferences that are showing up here, Blogger Food and then the Blogger, which is the main conference. You can see all their social media platforms. And then you can also see the way the site is navigated. So it's really started just as the conference, and it's grown into a community. It's a great case study, and if you're looking to reach women who blog, and there are some men who go as well, it's a great place to look. Okay, so the next slide is every one of these places we stop will have a takeaway. And the tip about blogging is broadcasting. And I know when I talk to a lot of groups, especially if it's about an event, they feel like blogging about an event is too much work. It just takes too much time, you know? But you have to think about having a team of broadcasters. Did anybody watch, I wish I was in a room, see, I'm pretending I'm in a room, Christy. Raise your hands if you saw. So anyway, the Belmont Stakes. I don't watch TV that often, but I loved watching it. I wanted to see if California Chrome would win, but I also am interested in how sports are broadcasting. You know, every time I watch it, it's something absolutely awesome. So this time, if you watched it, they had, I don't know, maybe 10 different interviewers who walked along a path, live camera action with a conversation. It wasn't like stand there and cut to the interviewer and, you know, just you stand there and answer a couple questions. No, there was a lot of movement. So I think blogging is a lot like that too. You want to send people out and have them cover the event. Now the next one is Facebook Flamingos. And here's what we've got is a look at Social Media Tourism Symposium. And you can see they have 2 events coming up. I like the way they've used the cover profile. I call this like a billboard. You can use the billboard on Google+, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. It's great to use these cover photos to really promote something. So this is actually the way Facebook looks right now, but everyone is going to be moving to a new design, if you want to show that off on the next one, Christy, this month. And already Plan Your Meetings has moved over to the new design, and just a couple things for you to look at. You'll see that there's the column on the left is new, and there aren't any tiles under the cover photo like there used to be. There's also an archive that's running on the right, and it's really cool because it's a different way of navigation. But one, just back to the blogs for a second, if you have a blog, you can really set up the navigation the way you want and the look you want. Keep in mind that whenever you're on these platforms, you are locked into their navigation and their limitations for images. So the next slide we have compares the 2 different sites, and you can get a look at the old Facebook and the new Facebook right there. It's kind of fun to see.
And we actually, Lauren Fox, she had a couple of comments.
Okay.
She's somebody who's struggling with budget, and she wanted to see the social media platforms on the decline and rise chart again. And Lauren, what I'm going to be doing is we can post the slides, so you can actually blow them up and actually look at them at length. We're going to put it on slideshare.net / Christy Casey Sanders. And what I will do is in the event page that you're probably watching this from, and in the description for the YouTube video, the link will be right there. So you'll be able to find those after the event.
Awesome. And feel free, if anyone wants any more details on these slides, I'm happy to step in and give you the sources and all kinds of things like that too. I do have, if you check out slideshare.net / WiredPRWorks, then you'll be able to find some presentations that have those slides as well. So one thing I love to do is education. So if you're looking for stats or anything, you might find some there you like. Okay, so the next slide shows a really nice event on Facebook. Isn't this beautiful compared to the way Facebook used to let you do events? What I would suggest here is having an event website that you also show in the Facebook cover page, because the problem is it's great to have a hashtag, but people don't like to think about how to make connections. So if you had a URL they could go to automatically, boom, they're there, and there's none of this, well, I have to look this up and figure out where it is. Now, yes, there is. You could say, yeah, but there's a link in this description. That's completely right. But if you have it also in the image, then it saves people time. So the Facebook tip on the next slide that you'll see is personalize. And by that, I mean really think about who's on the other side of the screen. It's not just you, and especially with events, I see this all the time. It's about push, 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 promote, promote, promote. And even if it's just a question about what are you interested in, or it's a profile of people who are going. Christy's done a great job of announcing who's on this webinar, and that's great. People like to know who else is going to be there. So the next slide is about LinkedIn. And if you're on LinkedIn and you know the word lion, all these people have pictures of lions, and they're asking people to leave their email addresses, which you should never do. But I'm sure no one has ever done that on this webinar, I'm sure. But this is an article about how to attract a huge crowd with LinkedIn. It's by Marla Tabaka. She interviewed me, and they're my tips on how to get people to an event. You can see the shortened URL up there. It's really for, this article is written for people who are solopreneurs, but there are still some good tips in there about how to use LinkedIn's advanced search to find people that you'd like to be in those seats. So the next slide is about LinkedIn. Just you can even go on to the next one too, Christy. I'll just keep talking because I know we want to make sure we make the most of our time. But LinkedIn is a network with over 300 million members, and those members now can be as young as 13 years old. 13, that's it, you know. So I'd much rather see 13-year-olds on LinkedIn than on Snapchat, but that's just my opinion. You know, they'll go where they want. But if you're from a university, make sure that you have your university page built out and done in a great way so that you really show up well on LinkedIn. And if you have a grad in the family, junior high, senior high, or college, I actually created a course for graduates called Get LinkedIn to College, Success and Beyond on the Udemy platform. That's UDEMY. It covers personal branding, networking, and LinkedIn. Because I felt like, you know, it's great to say I have a degree and I'm going to get started, but you know what? You got to have a personal brand too. So what we're looking at here is a LinkedIn company page, and this company, it's also a conference, it's called Recode. They got started in January, so they're very fresh, very new, super successful already. And if you have a LinkedIn company page, you can have one for your organization, and then for your event, you can have what LinkedIn calls a showcase page. So it's like a blog within a blog. It's really important to do updates on LinkedIn company pages. There's a lot you can do with LinkedIn. It's not just for networking anymore. So let's go to the next slide. And maybe you already have LinkedIn on your phone. If not, put it on there. It's amazing what you can do with LinkedIn. People say, well, how do I have time for that? And here in Chicago, people take the train in and out of the city, you know, so that's an easy time if you're commuting. But even if you don't commute on the train, these apps are so great. You check in and it gives you suggestions of what to do. And the next slide is for Android users. If you have an Android phone, I think it's funny because it says you don't have any devices, so I don't have an Android phone. So they know right away that I'm not part of their tribe. But anyway, they do have a LinkedIn app, which is great because they did it for a while. So the LinkedIn tip is really to think about how to mobilize. And by mobilize, I mean not only just your mobile phone, but really how to mobilize people to come to your event, how to mobilize them in groups, how to do you know, your company page. LinkedIn is all about mobilizing for action. Now the next slide is Twitter, and every one of these has an animal name, and so these are the Twitter tattlers. If you haven't produced a Twitter Vine video yet, think about trying it out, and if you don't know what they look like and you'd like to see some, you can go to twitter.com/Vine, and this is actually the Twitter Vine page. So a Vine is only 6 seconds long. A lot of them are like stop motion animation. So for instance, you can think about scripting your Vine out as like a storyboard for a movie, and every second is going to be something different. To me, it's hard to believe that the brain can really do this so fast, but it can. And so you can you could have like the exterior shot, the interior shot, the speakers, people smiling, and then you know the URL at the end or something like that. The cool thing is Vines are looping, so even after 6 seconds, people can watch it over and over, and I think that's really where the retention comes in. And then the next slide shows you an update. This is the Discover tab on Twitter, and you can see there's a lot of different things you can discover, which is fun. And one of the first things that came up when I looked at this was a Vine, and this is the first Vine from space. It's only 6 seconds, but you can watch it, and you can see that you can turn the sound on or off. And it's just really a cool way to share what's happening in the world in a very brief, abbreviated way. Some of the ways you might want to use a Vine at an event is you could have a Vine contest, or if you want to promote the event, you can still have a Vine contest, or you can just produce one or two or as many as you want. Actually, you know, I kind of think you need like a Vine pack. You know, you need at least a 12-pack or maybe a case of Vines. You need to think about producing more than one. Otherwise, it's too tough. So the Twitter tip is really to visualize, and by that I mean really think beyond those 120, 140 characters. A lot of people think Twitter's only about short messages that you type, and that's not really true. Photos and videos get shared a lot on Twitter, and they really separate you out and really highlight your stream. So the next stop we're going to go to is Google Plus Gorillas, and here's a slide from the PYM live event that we're on right now. So Christy did a nice job. I like that graphic.
Thanks. Good. I made it using Canva. which
Yeah.
is a free graphic design tool. So if you don't have somebody on staff, you can just go ahead and create custom dimensions, which is perfect for something like Google Plus, where every image is a very different size.
Right. That's so cool. Do we have any questions, or does anybody need to take a water break? I'm just kidding. Anyway. Do we have any questions along the way that we need to catch?
Not right now.
Okay.
But I just wanted to, it's a good time to remind people that you can use the question and answer app to type in things that you're wondering about. You can also tweet at PYM Live, and I'll see that live and be able to feed those to Barbara as we go along. If something kind of jumps to mind. And I just wanted to point out, too, another reason why I didn't go back and show that like rise and decline slide is because I didn't know if even if I went back to it, if you would be able to see it at a very high resolution because it's so small in the window. So
Right.
I'd rather have it like in a PDF form where you could play with it and you could manipulate.
Exactly, right. And you know, just a little bit of a side trip on statistics, I think people get really caught up in numbers. I know I love numbers, and it's just like fascinating to look at them all. But no matter what those tables and charts and numbers
We had
say,
a little bit of difficulty, so please hang by.
hello?
Hi, Barbara. Sorry, your audio went out for just a little bit.
Oh, is it okay now?
Yes, it is. It's working again.
Okay, great. I'm sorry. Don't know what happened with that. But what I was going to say is with numbers, just keep in mind that it's kind of like when you know, with cars, they say your mileage may vary. And your mileage is going to vary depending on what your audience is like. So it's great to see what the general population is doing in trends, but what your audience likes may be a little different or completely different. So with Google Plus has been around for a couple of years, and I know I did the first Google Plus workshop here in Chicago, and like 6 people showed up. It was like 3 days after it got started, and we all looked at each other like, what is this and what are we going to do with it? So it's been interesting to watch Google come out and really grow. And from an event perspective, I think it's wonderful to be able to do Hangouts like this. You can build up to the event with the Hangouts. You can do them at the event, post-event. But one of the things I know event planners are really interested in is keeping the event alive even after it's over. So Google Hangouts allow you to do that. And the next slide is the Google Plus tip, I think, which is to circle up. And if you don't know this about Google Plus, one of the cool things that I really like is you can add people to different circles. So if you have like a production team, they can be all one circle. Speakers can be another circle. Sponsors can be another circle. Attendees are another circle. So it's really easy to do communications and share just with those groups. It's a lot easier than email. You can do lists with Twitter and also with Facebook too, but I think Google Plus is the best at it. Now the next one is the fastest growing network or social network is Instagram. And I love Instagram. It's fantastic. One of my friends calls it artificially aging photos. I don't know if that's really true, but some of them do look really retro and vintage, and that's why people like it. This is actually a photo of a tweet wall or Twitter wall at another conference. It's not an Instagram shot. It is an Instagram shot, but it's not an Instagram wall. That's the differentiation I want to make. So what's great about Instagram, you can, on the next slide, you'll see that you can share photos with so many different places all at once. So the tip here is to multiply. With a word of caution, Instagram is fantastic for hashtags, and you'll see a lot of photos with, like, you can have 10, 20 hashtags, a lot of them. But the problem is when it goes over to Twitter, only one hashtag and only one Twitter ID will show up. So you don't want to clutter your Instagram updates with all those hashtags. And if it goes over to Facebook, there's it's like clutter like crazy. People don't get it. So what you can do, though, is when you post your photo on Instagram in the comment section, then you can drop in all those hashtags. And if you haven't checked out Instagram in the last week or two, look at it and also upload the update, because now they have a tool set that's like Photoshop in your phone. It's amazing what you can do with it. And Instagram is just a way to really bring your event to life. People really love it. And it's not just you. Keep in mind that we're talking about you as an event marketer and planner, but there's also a lot of people on the other side of the screen who have screens of their own, and they love sharing pictures. So you could have an Instagram contest, you can have an Instagram wall. There's a lot you can do. Next slide.
Oh, yes, and I also wanted to just point out, Krista Rupp had asked what the name of the editing tool that I use is, and it's Canva, CANVA.com, and I posted on the event page, I think I have 5 invitations. Right now it's in beta, so if you're interested, just put a comment on the event page that you're interested in. The first 5 people I'll invite in.
There you go. Yeah, it's really important. I mean, who would have thought that visuals would be so important, but they are. And if you have a tool like that, then that's what people are looking for. So the next step is YouTube Yabbies, and a Yabby is actually a crayfish. And here we're looking at the TED channel. So I know you've probably all seen TED Talks, and if you have any kids at home this summer, or I should say children or whatever, there is a TEDx Youth channel. So if you're looking for something for them to do and you want them to watch something, have them watch a TED Talk. So when I was at New Media Expo in January, escaping the polar vortex in Las Vegas, I heard that the #1 hottest way to market in 2014 is webisodes. And a webisode is a series, and it's something that you can do pretty simply. You can do your videos on your iPhone or your smartphone. You can do them on your iPad, and you can also use the iMovie app to edit them. So it doesn't have to be super sophisticated or super expensive. The couple of tips on video: make sure that the lighting is good, and make sure the sound is incredible. The visual doesn't have to be as good as the sound. So those are a couple things to know. YouTube is a great place to build a community, and if you look at the next slide, you can see that this is really where we're going. We're looking at people spending more time watching YouTube than any cable network, especially in a certain age group. And you may know, if you watch sports, you don't have to be at home or in a sports bar to watch a championship anymore, or even a regular program probably. All you need is a phone with an app and a connection, and you're ready to go. So we're starting to really see that people are looking for a production value, and they want to watch a series. And a webisode is a great way to do it. That's our tip on YouTube, is to really think about how you can do webisodes and be the channel that people want to watch. People love to be interviewed. You could even do, if your webisodes could also just be Google Hangouts, because then they go over to YouTube anyway. So there's another way to do it.
Yeah, and there's a do-it-yourself kind of video making channel too, where you can make your own animated videos, and it's called Powtoons. And so I've created a couple of Powtoons that, and when you publish them, you can publish them directly to YouTube and Instagram too. I think you can. They're linked to lots of different social networks.
That's cool. Yeah. So test the waters with video. And Instagram videos are 15 seconds. I don't think I mentioned that before. So SlideShare is a social network in and of itself. A lot of people think it's a place just to post presentations, which you can do, but you can comment on the presentations. You can also go pro if you want and use it as a way to really offer people an opportunity to get more information. You can put your SlideShares over on LinkedIn. And it doesn't have to be a PowerPoint that's given at a meeting. If you look here, if you look at the top slide shares, one of them is quotes from Brian Solis. And Brian's a great guy. I've met him. Who would think that his quotes would be a presentation, but they are. You know, I've seen people put up documents, and that's a presentation. There's a lot you can do to really bring alive and package your information into a presentation so that people can find it, and then you can post it on SlideShare. You could do speaker presentations from your event. You can do like an event promo. If you're an event planner, let's say you work for a destination property, you can do a SlideShare and do case studies like before and after. You could talk about what the results were. If you can get a photograph of your client along with a testimonial, fantastic. So really think about this as a way to produce a lot of different things. It could be a presentation. It could almost be like a mini magazine. And when you think about the old slideshows, you know, when people used to bring back vacation pictures, then you could even do that. You know, you could do just a tour of what you have to offer. So that's SlideShare. And then the takeaway on SlideShare is to really think about presenting. The presentations are great, speakers, and then you as well. So if anyone is in the market for a job, if you have a SlideShare, you can add that as an addition to your resume, where you have slides that talk about what you did for who, you've got your results, and it really walks people through your career. So SlideShare is a fantastic tool, and it's fun to just go explore too. If you're giving a presentation and you need ideas, you can go there and look, or if you want to learn about something, it's a great way to go too. So the next stop is at Pinterest, and Pinterest is, people wonder about Pinterest. Is it just for people who do crafts or people who get married or birthday parties? What is it? And Pinterest is, surprisingly enough, a pretty robust business platform, and there are lots of things you can find in Pinterest. If you're having an event, let's say you're having an event in London, there's an infographic right there about London that you can take and with their permission if you want, or just pin it right to your board. You can do a whole board about the destination that people are going to. You can do boards about your community, about topics. It's really worth exploring. And we do have a couple of stats that really underscore the value of Pinterest. It's like 80% of consumers really trust information and advice from Pinterest. And 70% of brand engagement on Pinterest is generated by users, not brands. So it's a place where if you put up information and people share it, it's like an endorsement, and then it really gets you into communities you couldn't really reach before. It's also a place where if you want to look at people who are leaders that you can't find somewhere else and you really want to know who's driving the conversation, you're looking for like an alternative route, Pinterest is a good place to look.
It's also a great way to build your organic search engine optimization, because Google actually indexes the links in Pinterest before they index the links on individual websites. So it's a great place to kind of build a tentpole of referring sites back to you so people can find your content.
Yeah, that's a great tip, Christy. I've seen people do simple things like say, the top 25 ways to do something, and each one of those is a different Pinterest pin. It drives a lot of traffic. It really rounds out what they're trying to do, and it's interesting. So the Pinterest tip here is just get pinned. The simplest thing you can do is add the pin it button to your website, and then people can pin if they want. It's interesting what people pin. It always surprises me, especially if it seems like academic or business information. People really do like to share that. If you have an infographic, those get pinned a lot. So if you make it possible for people to share your information, they're more likely to do so.
Cool.
So now we're going to go to a few other sites. Before we do, does anyone have a question? Has anything come in that we need to talk about?
So I'm actually going to type it in because Kelly Tripp was wondering what the animation site was, and that's actually powtoons.com. And the other one we mentioned was Canva.com, and I believe Kelly was interested in getting one of those invitations. So if there's anybody else who's interested, I think I have 3 more, because I'm going to give one to Krista Rupp, and I'm going to give one to Kelly Tripp, and so I'll be in contact with y'all afterwards. And the next 3 people who say they're interested, because I will need your email for that.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have some people that are going to be having some fun. That's great. Yeah. Okay, so the next stop we have is, I thought about, if you're in the jungle and you think about that scene in Lion King when Simba's on the big rock and he's looking around, that's kind of where we're at with this internet study. This is by Mary Meeker, and it came out in the last 2 weeks, and she looks at the past and the future. I don't have a lot of it here. There's like 150 different slides. But if you really want to dig into what's going to happen on the internet and what has happened, it's really worth spending some time with, and we do have the link there if you want to go check it out. I did pull just one slide because I think it's really important, and I think about when I was on a panel last week and we were asked, well, what's going to happen in 2020? Everyone is so interested in 2020, and a lot of conferences I go to, they want to talk about it. It's really only 6 years from now, and I know one of the stats I've heard is that 40% of the U.S. workforce will either be contractors or entrepreneurs by 2020. In 6 years, that's coming right up. And, you know, we're looking at an age shift. The boomers are getting older. They're kind of merging out of the job market, and the younger millennials are coming in. Millennials have a different way of viewing marketing. They like funny things. They like to be entertained. And so, you know, it's going to be a different approach there. And we're also looking at a shift in the way people are going to prefer communications. So it's something to keep in mind. What works right now, producing a small amount of messages to large audiences, may not work in the future, and it may not work with that younger audience. And we're already seeing with Facebook that the organic reach has dropped down to as little as 5 to 15% of your fans. That's not very much. So people are boosting ads, or boosting posts, running ads, all kinds of things to really get more attention, just to really get out there and get in the Facebook stratosphere. And then on the other hand, what are other people going to? Like the younger people, they love Instagram and they love Snapchat. That's that little ghost in the middle in the yellow that we talked about a little bit before. Sending a bunch of images to friends that only last 10 seconds or less, theoretically, because if you take a screen capture, they do last forever if you want them to. So we're just looking at a different way of communication. And it's kind of like when I thought about writing for the web in 2000, I thought, wow, you know, this is really going to change the world, because I'd already worked with it for a couple of years. And now we're really looking at the two things people really want to look at are headlines and images. That's really what grabs their attention. So if you have a great headline and a great image, then they might want to read what you've got to say. But that's where tools like Canva come in too, because you can put the headline on the image, double score, you know. So that's something to think about too. So the next slide we have kind of wraps up, I think, what we covered. So we'll just recap what we talked about, and we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. So for blogging, a blog is your home base, and WordPress is my favorite platform for that. I think WordPress is phenomenal. If you don't have a WordPress account if your site isn't already on WordPress, you can easily set one up. And with the blog, the best thing to do is to have an editorial calendar. We like to have like 4 different channels that people can follow. You can even make it as simple as having a theme of the month. Even if you write just once a week, that's pretty good. But you really want to think of yourself as a publisher and someone who's really got some content that needs to get out there. Now the war on, I don't like to use that word, but the game is on for content marketing. People are just producing tons of it, especially around events. So you do want to make sure that you have an editor's eye and that you give people 2 things that are interesting and useful. I heard that from copy bloggers, so I really think they know what's going on. But if it's interesting and useful information, people will follow it. Then with Facebook, really think about personalization and how it's really more about the person who's coming to your Facebook page than it is about you. And one easy way to do that with an event is to really think about models, you know, if you have, or avatars, that's another word. If you have like your top 3 avatars, it could even be people who you know will always be there. If they even sign up before the sign-up's up, you know. Then you've got people who are regulars who will probably show up, and then people who've never heard of you, you know. So if you can really figure out who those folks are, and you do want to do advertising on Facebook, then that'll give you a really good way to look at the options for demographics. With LinkedIn, it's all about mobilization. Make sure that you've got your team mobilized, you've got your group mobilized, you've got a company page, and that you do have a mobile site. And mobile sites are really important. If you don't have one, that should be at the top of your list of things to do, is to make sure that your site shows up really well on mobile, because we can see from all the statistics, you don't even really need statistics to see that people are doing so much on their mobile phones. All you have to do is go anywhere and you'll see everybody on their phone. Then with Twitter, you want to visualize, so don't think about it just as text and typing. Think about having some photos and also the Vines, the 6-second videos. And with Twitter, they do have really good photo tools as well, so you can play around with that and see what you can come up with. Google Plus, think about circling up. So look at who you want to be in your circles, and it's really easy communication, as I said. It's so much better than email. Email, I don't know about you, but email just gets so clunky, and it's so easy to have 24 emails over one little tiny event detail. Maybe your group isn't like that, but I've been around some that are, which is fine. That's just the way it goes. Then Instagram multiply. So when you take a photograph with Instagram, think about how it can go out other places, but remember, if you put all those hashtags in your first upload, it's going to look messy and clunky on the other platforms, so leave them in a comment. Also, go onto Instagram and discover people. It's a great way to really look at the world and see who is talking about you or even in your community. I think that's, if you don't do anything with Instagram yet, just look for the hashtag for your town and see what's going on there. That's a really good way just to step out your front door and look around. YouTube webisodes are hot, so think about yourself as a producer. All this stuff is just so much fun when you really think about it. It's like, wow, we could do this. And you don't really have to write a major proposal and get a ton of money. If you have creativity, you can do it pretty much for, it's like bootstrapping almost. You can just have fun with it. And you can scale up if you want. That's up to you as well. And then Pinterest. Add that pin it button on your Pinterest site to give people an opportunity to pin what you have. And if you're interested in more information, I think the next slide is where to contact me. And I'd be happy to talk to you if you have like one big problem you really want to tough it out and figure out, and give you a couple ideas and go from there. So that's, if anybody has any questions, we'll go ahead and answer them. And I just really appreciate this opportunity. I love sharing social media knowledge, and I love helping companies figure out how to get more people to their events.
Yeah, we actually do have a couple of questions. The first one, and what I love about the Q&A app for Google+, incidentally, is that you can actually, if you're watching the video and you see a question that you like, you can +1 it. So, so Lauren Fox has a +2 question, and she's wondering how Snapchat is being used at events.
Well, the answer is I don't have any personal experience with Snapchat, but I think that there are a lot of attendees who are probably using Snapchat to talk to their friends. Places like Comic-Con, I'm sure everybody's using Snapchat. I do know that with the Super Bowl, one of the car makers did use Snapchat. Some of the ways brands are using Snapchat is for coupons. I could see at an event, if you had Snapchat running in addition to the event app, because I know event apps do a lot of things in real time, if you had a Snapchat contest, or if you said, watch the Snapchat for what's going to happen, like if you wanted things to really happen on the fly, or if you really wanted to get your exhibitors involved and you knew your community was really into Snapchat, you could flash up, like, go to this booth and get this for like 5 minutes, or could almost have like a scavenger hunt with the Snapchat. So those are some ideas of how to really make it fun and exciting, because it's all in the moment. And like if you have a coupon, you have to take it, like one of the examples I read was a yogurt shop. You opened up your Snapchat and you showed them the coupon right when you were there. It only lasts for 10 seconds, so it's got to be something that has super short shelf life, but it's also very important and fun.
I have a question. So with Snapchat, of course, it's another app that people have to download, so you have to consider the demographics of who your attendees are.
Right.
Is there a certain, like, how would you promote that you're going to be using Snapchat at your event? Because a lot of times the biggest hurdle is actually getting people engaged or prepped to engage.
Well, yes, you're right. I mean, I see a lot of great apps and then people don't use them, and it really depends on the audience. Like if you have a group of lawyers, I don't think Snapchat would be the best place to use it, but you never know. I mean, maybe if you had a young lawyer breakout and so you had Snapchat, that group might be on Snapchat anyway. So what you really, to promote it, I would just test it out, and before you promote anything, just start a Snapchat, or if you want to start a Twitter hashtag or whatever you want to do, plant those seeds and see who's following. And then if you can see you're really getting a lot of folks coming along, and with Snapchat, it could be like even getting ready. And like there's so much that goes into an event that I find fascinating. I guess I'm just an event geek. In fact, I decided last year that my whole business was going to be working with people who plan meeting events because they're so fun. But think about all that cool stuff you could snap, You could just do all kinds of things like the setup, people getting there. If it's a tech conference, my friends and I were so fortunate to see one of the keynotes from BlogHer last year in the lobby in Chicago before they even checked in, so that maybe even have a Snapchat opportunity with one of your speakers, and then people could show up and they could just, line up Snapchat. So instead of having like what do they call it, a step and turn or the red carpet, you could have a Snapchat session and have everybody, it's like little fireworks, it all goes out at once. But test it with your audience and see, and if no one responds, then you have an idea that's not going to work. But if you have, or maybe you just try one thing where you do the Snapchat with the keynote or something and just see who shows up. But there's not a lot invested, you know. You just sign up for an account, and that's as far as it goes at the beginning. So
cool. Kelly Tripp had a question because the Facebook organic reach, you know, it was 10% a couple years ago, and it was even greater than that. And then there were all these different changes that Facebook made, not, you know, driven by the brand pages, but driven by a desire to extract more revenue from the brand pages. So, you know, there was a conference a couple of years ago with some PR professionals, and at the time they were like, well, what's your email open rate? If you're happy with 10%, you should be happy with 10% reach. And that's gotten even smaller now, where you know, there may be only 3 people who see things unless you're really sharing them on personal networks or throwing some money at them to promote. So do you have any tips on increasing Facebook exposure, or do you think that Facebook may, you know, stop being of use to event professionals in a couple of years?
Well, you know, there's 2 sides to that. And when I was out in NMX in January, there's one camp that says, oh, forget it, we're not going to pay to play, we don't want to do anything with Facebook. And then on the other side were some people who said, see ya, we're going to own it, you know, because the bottom line is almost everyone's on Facebook, you know, so it's not an easily dismissed platform by any means. So what can you do to really get better traction? See what's getting traction on other sites. That's one thing that helps out, and it might be something really silly, you know, it's surprising. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is really think about what's important and what you really want to promote. If you've got a great story that you want to promote, and if you work with a PR agency, and we do a lot of PR, I feel like PR is like the biggest piece of the puzzle that people don't get. But if you do have a great PR campaign, then you can take that post, you can promote it, reach more people. You can do ads. We always like to recommend with ads, running a test. Run a test like the weekend before the event, or if it's going to be a huge event, maybe a month before. Don't spend a lot. Have a little bit of a budget. You know, could even be as low as $50. But just see what happens. So I think you have to be smart about it. And the comment about email open rate is a good one, except for when people are in their email, they usually do look at a little bit longer than they would if they got a Facebook post in their newsfeed. So email is still the #1 marketing tool, I think. And if there's a way you can get email tied into social media, then you're really winning the game.
Yeah, I found that our team had to start looking at things, you know, stop looking at it from like a weekly basis, but really look at each post and the engagement, because every time you have a post that hits, you have a little bit wider window of reaching people. So if you stop giving them the stuff that they ignore and focus on the stuff that they love and kind of jiggle around on the times of day that you're posting things, you can figure out a formula that works at least for a couple of weeks before Facebook changes their algorithm again.
Yeah. Well, they're changing the design, so you know.
Yeah. I've got another question from Lauren. She wonders, how big of a team do you suggest having to make social media at an event truly successful? So, for example, is it just a job for one person, or do you need a team of 5 or 10? What do you recommend?
Well, it depends on the size of the event, of course. You know, if it's a small event, one person can handle it. If you don't have a large team, I'd recommend doing a couple things. One is to offer media passes if you have bloggers who are interested in your topic, because they can't help themselves. They're going to want to cover it. So that's one idea, and I know that's how I did get to NMX in January. I wasn't even thinking about going, but I got an email that said, your press pass is inside, and I said, I didn't apply for one. But, you know, so you get coverage if you do that. Another idea is to ask your attendees or people that are on your team who love social media. You can give away a pass for people who agree to cover it, and it doesn't have to be a lot. I mean, even if it's only a couple of posts, or you can have live bloggers like BlogHer did, you know. So I think you can be creative about it, because the problem is if you decide you need 5 or 10 people and your event is 3 days and you staff up for it, what happens to those 5 or 10 people after the event? You know, So you can bring in temporary social media if you want. You can, if you're going to a town and you want to see if you can get more coverage, you can reach out to bloggers there, people who have social media influence, which is great. But if their demographics don't match yours, it doesn't really matter. So I don't know that there's an easy answer for that, but I would really look at what are your goals and what you want to do, and make sure that you do have some coverage, because the worst thing is when it's a great event and no one knows about it except for the people who are inside the room because people just didn't share it.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, what we found is kind of a good fit is we have 3 different divisions of our company, and we have 3 people who kind of handle the social media, and we divvy it up based on what we enjoy doing.
That's a good way.
And we also have some volunteers who are part of our Planning Meetings audience who have said to us, hey, I want to be a social media moderator. So there's a woman in Dana Point, California, who's been moderating our LinkedIn group. And so there are a bunch of other people who are more interested in Instagram, and so they time that we can share, and they tag us so we know where to find it. And at our live events, one way that we figured out how to amplify what's being shared in a way that kind of relieves the staff tension, because a lot of times I have to run the show, so it's hard for me to live tweet if I'm also emceeing. And so we give away awards and door prizes. So instead of holding all the door prizes until the end, if there's like a wine basket or a gift certificate or something that people may not stay until the end for, we'll give those away throughout the event so that it not only makes it less of a cluster at the very end, but it also rewards people along the way for engagement and for social media interaction and for creating content that we can then go to someplace like Storify and create a story out of after the fact.
Right. One easy way is to get a keynote speaker that is into social media if that's what you want. I know I spoke to a group of college marketing and PR people, and we went in knowing that we were going to measure all the tweets. So everybody was excited because they wanted to see what they could do. And then you get the whole room engaged and charged, and so that's kind of a fun way to do it too.
Cool. Kelly also had a suggestion. She sees event web pages if people are wondering about how to get people to use things like Snapchat. Have a dedicated page that explains beforehand how to use the social media that people are going to be using at the event. Are there other forms of messaging that you would recommend, Barbara?
Before the event? Other forms of messaging. Of course, we mentioned email. That's a good way to do it. I think it would be great if you had an attendee update email that went out and you had Facebook updates. So what would happen is it would make it seem kind of like an exclusive experience, and then other people would want to attend as well. But I do like the idea of putting it on the event page. Videos are always great. People like those.
Very cool. And I think another thing that would be fun to do is little Google Hangout previews with your speakers or your sponsors. So and people can actually kind of get a sneak peek of, hey, little things like that you can build up excitement.
Exactly, yeah.
I loved when you said this is, you know, the fun and the creative things that you can be doing, because it reminded me of something that Tim Sanders had said at an MPI PECNA event a long time ago, and he said, meeting professionals, you guys are the movie producers of the corporate world. And it's so evocative. I mean, I think that that's one of the things that kind of pulls people into the industry, is that it really is, when you look at the elements of event design and figuring out how to take business objectives and goals and structure something around it, that's what's kind of fun about it. And so the social media aspect is also, it gives you a way not only of constructing an experience that can influence people's behavior, but social media gives you the tools of engaging with them and finding out what's important to them before they even get on site.
Exactly,
So we have kind of reached the end of our time, but we did have some kudos for you. A lot of people were very excited and thankful, Barbara, for the time that you spent.
Very nice. Yeah, I love sharing information, and if I can help you with even one idea to have a better event, then I'm just thrilled. So thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem. And Andrew Maxwell really enjoyed the blogging overview. That was extremely helpful for him. And I wanted to let Mickey Gramlin and Lauren Fox know that you are going to get invitations from Canva. So if I stalk you and ask you for your email address, that is why. And I have one more Canva invitation because I do have 5, and that's for people who have claimed them. So if you do want one, tweet at me at PYMLive, and I will I'll get that to you. So thank you, Barbara, so much for the social media safari today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much, Christy, and thanks to everyone who tuned in and for those who are watching.
Yeah, thank you, our social media audience. Thank you, Kelly and Lauren and Mickey and everybody else who have been hanging out with us for an hour. Plan well and prosper. I'm going to be posting links to the YouTube video where you can find this and the SlideShare video where you can look at her slides up close and download them. I'll be putting all of those on the event page and in the description for the YouTube video. So until next time, plan well and prosper, friends.